Do you ever think about leaving a legacy for your children or a fortune and things that will make their life better and their children's life better? You see, I think one of the best things that we can leave behind for our children is a safe world where they can thrive and they can carry on our legacy. And one of the biggest threats to that right now is global warming. And this is a topic that a lot of people just like to ignore or deny because it's quite painful to think about. But every single year, our home, Earth, gets more and more at risk of getting to a place where it's really hard. It can be really hard to come back from. And so I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the um, effects of global warming and some of the things that we can do to drive for change. And so, global warming is one of the most underestimated and prevalent issues that we face as a race, and it's important. It's important that we treat it with the urgency and the care that it requires of us. John Houghton wrote that because of the need for urgent action, the greatest challenge is to move rapidly to much increased energy efficient and to non-fossil fuel energy sources. But that's not the only thing that will help. We can make such a big impact by just changing things in the way that we live day to day. And that impact carries on to our families, our friends, our communities, and it has rippling effects. This chart right here is an example of, or is a visual of the temperature changes over the past couple hundred years. So it starts out with the 1880s and it goes all the way up to 2020. And if you look here, between 1980 and 2020, there was a huge spike that just continued to go upwards and upwards, right? So every single year it gets hotter and hotter, and it creates atmospheric pressure that causes things like the Australian wildfires that we saw in 2019 and 2020. It was estimated that these wildfires were amplified by 30% due to changes in the atmospheric conditions as a result of global warming. And then also catastrophic hurricanes like Katrina can be more expected with this rising climate change. So just a couple of things to think about. And then here is a infographic of Australia, and you can see how anywhere where you guys see the red, those were the more intense fires. But this went all across Australia's border, causing catastrophic um, damage to that area. And some of the biggest culprits when it comes to global warming are linked to the food that we consume and, of course, our daily activity. So, what that means is that you have the potential to make some changes if you change the way that you move through this world. So, for starters, we could try having, meatless lunches, dinners, or breakfast options. Not everyone can turn vegan, it's not realistic, but if people can manage to do just once, twice, three times a week, or just replace a couple different of your meals with, more vegetables and meatless options, that drastically makes a change. Here we have an infographic of just some of the things that um, livestock and the consumption of meat has on the environment, the effect that it has. So, 14.5% of greenhouse gas emissions come from raising livestock. Um, we could decrease our emissions by 70% if we followed a vegan diet. The amount of ice free land used for livestock grazing is about 26%, and it takes about 5,000 gallons of water just to make 1 pound of beef. Just recently, we've been seeing more documentaries about the effects that the Amazon deforestation has had on our world, and 80% of the deforested land in the Amazon is used as livestock pasture land. So it's definitely um, one small change that you can make that, though it seems minimal, has great effects on our environment. If every person were to be accountable and make one change, this could be one of the biggest ones. Another thing that we could do is, of course, opt to walk, ride our bikes, take the bus every, once a week, twice a week, every so often, carpool. I mean, that makes a huge difference and reduces our carbon footprint. Another thing is voting for legislature and leaders who promote natural energy sources and are open to transitioning and investing into more sustainable projects. So there is a initiative right now for leaders to endorse eco-friendly alternatives, and our current administration is fighting for cutting net greenhouse gas emissions to zero over 10 years. They want to invest in clean manufacturing, um, and renewable and zero emission energy sources, investing in infrastructure, right? Upgrading our transportation and housing so that we can be more mobile without increasing our carbon footprint. Um, and those are just a couple of the things, right? So, another thing that you can do is just becoming more politically active and using your voice, using your vote to vote for leaders who are going to drive for the change that you want. You see, some people like to deny climate change. They will say things like it's a hoax or it's not tied to human activity, and things like that. But we just cannot argue with science and facts. If you guys think about that chart that you saw earlier that shows the just drastic change from the 1800s to the 2000s, that just shows exactly how rapidly it's increasing, right? And unless we start taking action as individuals, as families, and as a community, we just won't be able to see those changes. And so while these things seem minor, they have a huge effect. And so these practices can help secure a future for our children where they're not living in a hostile environment, where they can have fresh air and safe conditions. And if we can manage to do these things, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but it starts with you and it starts at home. So if you take anything from this, let it be to make individual changes from continuously educating yourself on sustainable alternatives and practices. Find healthier recipes that you and your family can enjoy and that you guys will love. Vote, get to know your candidates and their stance on things, right? If they turn a blind eye to our environment, know that that's a red flag, right? What do they gain by denying or ignoring these problems? And then lastly, use your knowledge to educate others. The the best thing that we can do is to just spread awareness and share how we're changing. So thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a great day and stay safe.